Morning. A few months before Master Sotaesan entered Nirvana, he told his disciples, "Fortify your minds anew." When Master Sotaesan said this, he knew that his time with them would not last much longer. I imagine how much he would have wanted to make sure that his disciples understood his teachings correctly. With full compassion, he shared the words, "Fortify your minds anew." To me, this phrase says to resolve your mind again and refresh yourself. These words are caring and encouraging, and yet they are not very tender or loving. Rather, they express determination. To someone who needs our support, we may say, "Don't worry, everything will be just fine." Sometimes we need this sort of encouragement from others. However, when we are aware that our loved ones are going through significant challenges, gentleness may not be the only proper response. In those cases, words of tough love may work better to help them shape their experience properly in a timely manner. This happened to me recently. The other day, when I was reading the scriptures, Sotaesan's words pierced my heart. I felt that Master Sotaesan deeply cared about my well-being when he said, "Fortify your mind anew." His advice was substantive, and it prompted me to reflect on how I am going to strengthen my mind as I settle into my new home here at the One Dharma Center. Recently, I recalled two specific instances that helped refresh my mind, and today I'd like to share them with you. The first one is related to kimchi. I know some of you might be familiar with kimchi, but just in case, let me share a little bit about it. I grew up with kimchi just like many other Koreans. If you have never tasted kimchi before, it can be pungent and tangy because of the red pepper seasoning and its fermentation process. However, once you get to know the taste, you will realize that it can add a unique zest to any kind of meal. If you have well-made kimchi in your refrigerator, you have no worries about what you're going to cook for dinner. You can make lots of dish out of this. To a Korean person, kimchi is a cultural necessity, and making kimchi is a serious process. I made winter kimchi during each of the 9 years I served in the North Carolina temples. Making kimchi was one of my jobs. One year, I did everything myself. I did the grocery shopping, salted the three big boxes of napa cabbage, and prepared the red pepper paste seasoning as well as all the vegetables. That kimchi making process itself took 3 days, and then I fermented it at room temperature for a few additional days. But when I finally tasted that kimchi, I found that its texture was way too soft. I told myself it shouldn't be like this. I could instinctively tell that something had gone terribly wrong, and I had to dispose of the whole batch. Why ever did this happen to my kimchi? Feeling so frustrated, I made a call to my mom in Korea, who is like my cooking goddess. My mom understood right away about the condition of kimchi, and yet she was not sure about the exact cause. After a long conversation, we came to speculate that the cabbage itself was of a bad quality from the start, even though it had looked very healthy and fresh. Sometimes we cannot determine quality by looking at external appearances, whether it is a person or a cabbage. The image of spoiled kimchi lingered in my mind for a couple of days. I felt distressed, even after I blamed the cabbage. When things go wrong, especially when done with a great deal of effort, we can feel disheartened. 3 days later, I talked with my mom again. This time, she said, "Brush off your feelings. You may think what you did was in vain, but nothing we do is fruitless because we can always learn from our mistakes. Nothing is ever lost." Her voice was kind and yet strong. Her last words, "nothing is ever lost," resonated in my mind. After chatting with my mom, I could finally brush off my discouragement. I pulled myself together and moved on. Many times, my mom's advice boosts my energy. My second story is related to my walking pilgrimage on Camino de Santiago. In the fall of 2019, I went to Spain to walk on a pilgrimage path for 5 weeks. In retrospect, I was lucky that I was able to go there before the pandemic hit the road. There were several things that happened to me on that pilgrimage. And today, I'd like to share a lesson I learned which really impact on my journey. If you cannot avoid it, enjoy it. And here's what happened. While walking, I encountered many challenges, and strong sunlight was one of them. Even in autumn, the sun along the path was invincible. I had not realized until about 10 days of walking that the strong sunlight had burned my skin quite noticeably. One day, after finishing a day's walk, I took a shower, carefully looked at my face reflected in the mirror, and found black and brown spots all over it. I looked simply ugly. I had even gained new wrinkles. Seriously, I started to worry about how I might look after this walk was over. I regretted not paying more attention to the condition of my face from the beginning. Luckily, on the following day, I passed by a big city. I found a cosmetic shop and bought something called intensive face care cream. It sounded just right. So, did it work? No, not at all. Nevertheless, for the next few days, I reasoned with myself that I needed to walk under the same circumstances for another 3 weeks, and my facial condition was not going to improve. What should I do? I could keep unhappy thoughts about my face, or I could substitute those thoughts with something else. So I made up my mind. Let me just smile. That solution was rather simple and easy, and so I really smiled a lot, pretty much all the time. When I was engaging with other people, I kept on smiling. And as a bonus, it helped open my heart toward them easily. Even when I was walking alone, I smiled at myself. I reminded myself to smile whether I felt lonely, tired, or concerned about something. Of course, I also applied the intensive face care cream each day. Days passed, and guess what? The speckles on my face did not go away, but I felt good about myself. My heart was uplifted and everything was okay as it was. If you cannot avoid it, enjoy it. I learned that I was really able to enjoy my challenging experiences. Also, I knew that fake it until you make it can be a true statement for me too. The more I smiled, the lighter my mind became. Through these two episodes, I learned that a positive attitude and listening to others' advice works for me when I am in difficult situations. These two lessons served me as spiritual tools quite well until I met this new challenge called Adulthood Part 2 at the One Dharma Center. It has been about 3 months now since I started to settling myself in this new environment. And in addition, I'm going through the physical changes of menopause. So even though I may look happy on the outside, I also have been struggling. I have needed to let down my guard to let in new experiences, but I have not exactly known how. This time, smiling did not seem to uplift my heart fully. Reminding myself of encouraging words did not seem to work either. So, what to do? My question showed me that I may have overlooked something important in my spiritual path. I felt humbled because I thought I knew what I needed to know. I expected I would be just fine. My solution this time came from Master Sotaesan in the passage where he asked his disciples to refresh their minds. When I read it, one word really jumped out at me, the word faith. Here is the passage. Reflect on whether you will regret or not, even when I am gone, and fortify your minds anew. The present day is definitely a time of trial. So those with shallow faith will wilt, but those with firm faith will see good results. My Dharma is transmitted so that anyone with faith and dedication and with public spiritedness can receive it. Faith is a fundamental and religious word. In fact, it is the least popular subject in my mind. However, I have felt the need to look into how faith can shape my experience. Basically, faith means to believe something. But more importantly, faith means to drop preference. When there is no preference in my mind, I can let my guard down easily and I can let in any unexpected experience just as it is. Having faith serves me. It helps to open the fountain of my mind. In that sense, faith is a spiritual scaffold for my practice. It is an inner foundation that reinforces me to be myself. As I've grown older in the One Buddhist community, sometimes I outsmart myself with deception and think that I know how things truly work. At other times, I build an idea like, I should have known better by now. And all this is brought about by my egoistic mind. Faith can come in and let these minds melt. Having faith boosts me to pay attention to the details of how my mind really plays and how I need to refresh it. If I say that a positive attitude builds an external frame for our practice, faith expands its inner foundation so that we can always reach our true nature, the fountain of our mind. As Master Sotaesan was near his death, he was concerned about whether his disciples might try to outsmart themselves and think that they knew enough, and so not genuinely making an effort to practice. Fortify your minds anew. Reflect on your faith thoroughly. I hear his voice saying this to me. Faith is the foundation for expanding the frame of our minds. With a new mind, body, and life, renew our home and our world. This is the phrase we say every single day at the end of early morning meditation here at the One Dharma Center. If we are able to renew our minds each day, we will be reborn every day. And now I'm working on making this phrase my own. Thank you.